Welcome to the CFE Media and Technology Education Session, the Smart Buildings Expert Panel. I'm your moderator, Amara Rausgis with CFE Media and Technology. Let's get some of the basics out of the way before we dive into this topic. In keeping with our CEP policy, please take some time to read the quality assurance slide. This session is designed for technicians and engineers who want to understand the fundamentals of smart buildings and learn some tips and tricks from industry experts. If you're interested in receiving one AIA CES approved learning unit for this event, you need to pass a 10-question exam. To take the learning unit exam and to download your AIA CES certificate, use the resources option on the left side of your screen. In keeping with the American Institute of Architects Continuing Education System Policy, please take some time to read the quality assurance slide. Thank you. For a seamless online experience, here are some tips. Additional resources can be viewed and downloaded on the left side of the screen below the session's agenda. If you'd like to take notes within this session, please click on the left panel labeled Notes to do so. The session is available on demand if you need to come back at any time. Here's a list of the learning objectives. We'll touch on these in today's presentation. Additional resources can be viewed and downloaded on the left side of the screen below the session's agenda. There are also underlined hyperlinks to references and resources throughout the presentation. All right, let me introduce the expert panelists today. Owen Dalton works as an electrical engineer and lighting designer while helping run the Denver office engineering operations for Canon Design. He's also helping to grow Canon Design Integration Services, a smart building consulting group at the firm. Mo Fahim leads the Intelligent Building and Technology practice at ESD, focusing on the built environment and digital transformation. His expertise in ICT design, MEP project management, construction oversight, and facility operations, along with his passion for innovation, brings added value to solving complex problems through technology-driven solutions. As the Director of Project Development and Engineering for Southland Energy, Eric Nienhuis is responsible for the technical development of energy projects, including coaching and leading project developers, energy engineers, and measurement and verification specialists. Benjamin Wirtz is a senior engineer for WSP USA's Think Bolder Innovation Center, where he is involved in design of complex mechanical and control systems, as well as building management integration in smart building projects. It's my pleasure to work with some of the most well-informed smart buildings experts in the industry. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining this panel today. Let's get started. Mo, you're up first.
Thank you, Amara. My pleasure to be here, and thanks for having us. For those listening in, thank you for joining us, and hope you find the panel today and the virtual week to be very informative. I want to start us off with a non-technical philosophical spin about smart and smart definitions. Borrowing from Plato and rephrasing the old proverb, smart, I believe, lies in the eyes of the stakeholder. So most of us here on the panel, most of us listening in have probably heard that if you ask 10 different people and 10 different stakeholders the definition of a smart building, you're going to get 10 different answers that are all different, but yet all correct. So, and why is that? As we all know, smart designs are not governed or guided by industry standards. They're not code governed. There is not a rating system in place yet to help distinguish and guide through the journey. So we're just starting to realize some of these applications. And as a member of the industry, so how do we sum it up and how do I define smart? I think at its most basic form and broad form, I think a smart building is one that delivers on the triple bottom line: environmental, economical, and experiential. It's a tech-enabled, people-centric, and connected environment that optimizes space, systems, and services.
any smart building or smart project, it's important that you, as all of us as consulting engineers and designers, we really understand our client and our owners very well. And it's important that we're involved in the process or as early in the project as you can be, really, because as Mo just mentioned, there's many different flavors, many different definitions of smart, all of which are correct. So really, you know, it's about what does your owner or client need? What problem are they trying to solve? And that will vary for each client. So this slide here shows a graphic that shows kind of a circular iterative process approach to any smart implementation project. Usually it starts with visioning. You know, what are we trying to achieve, and how is it different than what we currently have? You know, what is your owner trying to achieve? Secondly, it goes to the business cases. How will this help them, help their bottom line, help their business case for something, you know, a solution that they don't currently have implemented. And only after those first two things can you really get into system selection and design, you know, the hardware, the tech, the gadgets, you know, some of the cool stuff that many of us enjoy thinking about and specifying. But without that early visioning and high level business cases, you know, you can quickly get kind of sidetracked and lost in the technology just for technology's sake. And then of course, as you implement it into a project, it goes into construction, it gets installed. You know, how is it actually working? And then, you know, if you get repeat business or the clients looking for, you know, more expansions on that, the cycle starts again, right? You're back into the visioning and business case phase. So it kind of becomes an ever evolving process here. So you can read more about this in an article that was in the magazine there on the screen. There's a link to that explaining more high level about this part in the process.
So as you know, again, I think that new applications, smart applications are again ever changing and evolving. As Ben was saying, those applications, those solutions, they sit on an infrastructure that has to be considered as a part of the delivery of those smart solutions. And how well those parts of the infrastructure come together is very critical to the overall success. So again, what I would say is that again, there's really three facets of that infrastructure. There's the physical manifestation of the systems, their control and their sensors. There's the IT network part, and there is then the intelligence that connects it all together. And again, we're going to dive into a little more deeply into some of these elements of the infrastructure. I'm going to highlight a couple elements here while I'm on this screen that I think I've come into contact with through my career, and things that both current and what I see developing. So again, from a building system standpoint, what we see is that across a building, the lighting system, the heating, cooling plants, the security, you know, these systems are all growing in their interconnectedness and in the data that they can offer. And again, that as that data sets become richer and richer, it opens up new applications and new things that can be done and offered to a client. All that data sits within individual controllers on these different systems. So a plan for how those controllers are implemented and what gets located within each of those becomes very critical. And I'm sure we'll be touching on that. And then again, from a protocol standpoint, how those controllers and how those systems can actually exchange data across different systems on open protocols, and what some of these open protocols mean for an owner in terms of what the owner needs to provide as input and definition behind how these things come together. We're going to touch on that too, but that becomes very, very critical to the future success of the delivered solutions. The IT networking, you know, infrastructure, again, we're talking about the Ethernet, fiber, server, and all of the standard sort of data-centric solution sets. And again, some of these things may be physical, some of these things may be cloud. Again, that is definitely, you know, the infrastructure and the industry is moving to cloud. But again, what I'm seeing is that there's still a place for these physical, physical computers and servers to fill a role. The other thing that we're running into a lot in this whole arena, or part of the solution, is the cybersecurity element of things. So the cybersecurity, particularly for federal and DoD type implementations, becomes very, very, very important and has to get focused on very early in the process. And then the intelligent part, again, this is as Ben was saying, and as Mo has, you know, mentioned, I mean, this is where the solutions are evolving. This is where the creativity is really happening. And so to me, this is the very, very exciting part of smart building solutions. But as we're saying, the amount of flexibility that's there to deliver these solutions means that we have to come together in the industry as teams to really define what the outcomes are that we want to achieve early, so that we can drive to those outcomes. So I think that, to me, that and I'm going to touch a little bit more on what some of these solutions are in a later part of the forum here. But again, early definition becomes very, very critical to these applications.
So as we've talked about, you know, defining a little bit about what a smart building really is. We've talked about some of the stages about visioning. We've also looked at what some of these solutions may entail from a hardware, software standpoint, from an intelligence software or an intelligence standpoint. What this slide is really talking about is how, as consulting specifying engineers in the industry, we are using, you know, as Mo mentioned, there's not a whole lot of standards right now, you know, in our industry and within smart building consulting. However, we are using the framework of an established industry to deliver our solutions right now. And that's really seen through the Division 25 specifications and through that project delivery method. So as a smart building consultant, where many of us who sit on this panel are acting in that role, we are executing these type of solutions through the construction framework of Division 25. And so as a specifier, we are delivering our solutions through Division 25, as I mentioned. This typically entails the software and the hardware necessary to enable these smart building applications. And that specification is meant to trigger a dedicated contractor focused on building system controls and integration. So sort of the other half of the specifier, but on the contractor side. And through this framework, that's how we're delivering these types of solutions roped into overall building projects.
We wanted to know at Consulting Specifying Engineer what was really going on in the engineering community. So we conducted some research just recently. This information came out in September on what engineers, consultants, others allied to the building field were doing in the smart building industries, and what products, what services were they focusing on. And not surprisingly, automation and controls came out at the top when we asked this question. But I think it's really interesting to take a look at what different products or tools engineers are using and what may be rising to the surface as we continue to work within smart buildings. Mo, I think you also had some ideas and comments on this.
Yeah, thanks, Amara. As you said, you know, I was not surprised to see these numbers. The focus being automation controls, energy efficiency, HVAC, being tech biased, and that's what I do and what I offer. I'm a bit disappointed that I would like to see technology and smart buildings start to surface more and more upfront, because I want to see the industry as a whole not just be an evolution of BAS and automation and just focus on energy and just focus on building and efficiency, to focus on the other use cases and the other outcomes, the things that Eric and Ben were starting and Owen to allude to, because it's an evolution and revolution beyond integrated automation. Think of it as not just conversion of traditional building system, but we want to create eventually these autonomous, truly autonomous environments where analytics is evolving from descriptive and diagnostic to predictive and ultimately prescriptive. So truly the emergence of AI and ML in the built environment. Would love to see systems more and more that are focused about IoT sensors, contactless tech, digital platforms, prop tech taking a more front, forward, and center position in our industry as MEP consultants and smart building consultants.
Right, so we asked a similar question that kind of filled out that information. You know, how frequently is an owner or a facility manager actually using those systems as designed? And it wasn't as high as we thought it would be. So all of the time was only 15%. So the designs, the systems, the products that are being placed into these buildings are not being used as they were originally designed. Some of the time turned out to be 56%, which is pretty good. But what does that mean? Does that mean that the building owners or facility managers are overwhelmed? Does that mean they don't understand the data? I know, Owen, you had some feedback on different types of products and services that you wanted to share here.
Sure, yeah, I think, you know, traditionally our industry and, you know, MEP consultant engineers are really used to dealing with the facility manager as one of our major, you know, buckets of stakeholder on the client side. I think where we see smart buildings leading, and you know, some of the things that we're trying to talk about today is we're looking at affecting more than just energy efficiency now, and more than just the way we sort of operate our buildings. We're really looking to push that triple bottom line further. We're looking to sort of interface and affect more parties on the owner side than just the facilities group. And I think, you know, the exciting piece about smart building consulting is that we do have the ability to touch the users in a more direct way. However, you know, as Ben, you know, alluded to, the visioning and the stakeholders portion of a smart building project can start to get super complicated with a lot more interested parties. You know, you may now have day-to-day operations folks also as a part of the conversation, in conjunction with the facility manager, in conjunction with, you know, the business office, things like that. So as a smart building consultant, we're really looking to engage these stakeholders earlier on and develop solutions that are talking directly to them. So I think this is more of an evolution of the industry, really, that you know, our solutions are not necessarily traditional solutions that only affect, you know, one portion of the stakeholder.
And another question that we asked in this consulting specifying engineer research was, how is COVID-19, the current pandemic that's affecting everyone, making people think differently about smart buildings? And the research was kind of interesting because a lot more experts, a lot more consulting engineers are considering smart building technologies in light of how it can help them and their clients and the facility managers deal with COVID-19 as the population returns to buildings, whether it's a manufacturing facility or a hospital or an office building. So this data, you know, COVID-19 has changed how people are thinking about smart buildings and are perhaps making people think a little bit more thoroughly about the technologies that can be involved here.
Yeah, thanks. And now I'd just like to touch on the IT, networking, and cybersecurity side of things. As we've mentioned before, is kind of the just a critical function of any smart building implementation. So this is not, you know, I'm not a technology designer per se, but as from a mechanical perspective and a building automation and controls perspective, as more and more BAS deployments are now IP based just by default. A lot of the manufacturers have That's the way they would come in and install a BAS network in a facility now. So everything's moving more IP based, and that, of course, includes the IoT based sensors that you might buy for some of in your home as well. So, but it all relies on the internet, really, the IP based backbone. So the image here on the screen is not really meant to be readable. The text is kind of small, but the highlighted bar in the middle says integration bus. So that can mean a lot of things, right? An integrator, a system provider could provide their own bus to do that. Or if you're talking about a fully converged network in a building, you could be relying on that one single building network. Of course, when you do that, you're plugging all these things into that. Again, it really is critical. Whoever's managing that network is going to want to know exactly what's going on that network from a cybersecurity perspective, and so they understand it's an approved device, an approved source, and with millions of things plugged into that same network, it quickly gets complicated. But of course, most of our owners and clients, and as well as us who can help them with these things, there's plenty of people who are well versed and have the sophisticated knowledge to handle those types of issues, often on the owner's own internal IT team. So if we can involve them early in the process, certainly we can take advantage of all their expertise and how to manage these types of, software, more virtual environment types of things. So we should be leveraging their expertise, and then of course it's their network, right? They're going to be managing it. So get them involved early, because if you wait and if it just kind of becomes an afterthought until you're moving into construction, now we have to talk to the owner's IT team, they're going to be surprised, and you often get a lot of resistance. What do you mean you're going to plug this thing into my network? I can't allow that. So getting ahead of all that and leveraging their deep expertise can save you a lot of time later down the road. And then of course the other kind of just more technical point there, sequencing the IDF rooms or the IT rooms in any project, when those rooms are ready to be live during construction, during any new build or even any renovation or retrofit. Whenever you're relying on that IT network to plug in your systems, your sensors, that room has to be live and it has to be ready to go when they need to start commissioning the system, right? So that's a little earlier than we've traditionally seen. Some IT rooms, 20 years ago, say they kind of end up on the back end of a construction schedule, but now, as a critical point in the middle of the system there, as the graphic depicts, they're a pinch point. So just construction sequencing that, and sometimes it takes a little education of some contractors, general contractors, on when that needs to happen. Of course, we're all in this together, and in our recent experience, we're starting to work with more contractors who completely understand that. So just kind of, they're also getting ahead of that virtual need, if you will.
So great, and I just really want to build on a couple of points that Ben made, and the points relate to data flow. And as Ben said, there is a lot of, and many of these solutions are now built and being delivered on an IP infrastructure, and that can create an enormous amount of data flow. So coming into a project with a planned approach for the architecture and data segmentation can be very, very critical to delivering a solution that doesn't overwhelm. And so I just would say that, and again, what that ends up doing is, again, we're talking here about these intelligent applications. These are use cases that depend upon the flow of that data. So architecting correctly and specifying the way in which data is flowing between systems very clearly, and will create reliable data flow that then creates reliable smart solutions. So Again, I think, again, my world is energy efficiency, energy solutions, and these are solutions that drive efficiency in buildings. Most frequently, I'm finding myself functioning with my team in existing buildings, so leveraging technology or expanding on technology that exists within a single building or a large installation. The solutions that we're focused on are, again, heating and cooling plan optimization. Again, these are high energy intensive parts of buildings. We're looking at integration of lighting and HVAC systems to integrate and drive more dynamic behavior between those systems. Again, with our higher end solutions, so campuses, labs, hospitals, these kinds of owners, what we're hearing is an engagement in the use case discussion of other parts of the organization beyond facilities, as Owen was saying, that what we're seeing is the information systems groups are looking for ways to leverage infrastructure to deliver more client experience. So things like wayfinding and material tracking and accomplishing that through lighting systems that are going to be in place anyway, and systems that have an energy related value proposition when they're delivered. So how do we deliver that energy value proposition while looking forward to the next generation of solutions? So we're having a lot of that kind of conversation right now. The other thing that we're seeing is developing is solutions that would look at the number of people dynamically that might be in a space and adjusting ventilation and adjusting lighting to that data as that data is made available. Some of the challenges, again, we talked about COVID-19 and the challenges that's presenting to all owners. How do I adapt my systems? How do I provide the appropriate amount of ventilation? What's the energy impact of these things? So we're seeing that generally the solutions drive higher amounts of outside air, higher ventilation rates, higher energy use. So again, it's going to really drive the industry to look at how do we help owners provide that kind of value to their buildings and to their occupants, but manage the energy cost impact of that. We're also seeing in the industry across the United States really a drive toward dynamic energy pricing. We're seeing a lot of a need to adjust energy consumption on the basis of a regional based need or requirement. Here in California, again, the amount of photovoltaic that's been implemented here in the state has really driven the state to really struggle with those late afternoon hours where PV starts going away. And so those costs are very, very high, and the state's grappling with that. So to drive buildings to dynamically react to that is where we're going from our solutions with owners. And then again, looking at also how can a smart building help owners grapple with capital planning and sustainment of their facilities? So what's happening at an equipment level, and beginning to integrate more disparate sources of data like facility condition assessment with operational data with other solutions. Again, helping owners get an entirely different and dynamic view of what's going on in their buildings. That's where we see things going.
Well, for an example here, Amara, I picked a specific project that's had a non-traditional approach. It focused more on the digital transformation. And a little backdrop story on this project specifically, as part of the quest of creating a modern workplace of the global headquarter of a Fortune company, the CEO had a vision of delivering a people-centric space that not only helps attract and retain talent, as everybody is basically pursuing nowadays with the new developments, but one that is technologically advanced, and helps foster creativity and connectivity. So I loved what Owen mentioned is how do you touch the user direct, right? It's a whole experiential engagement aspect. Next slide, please. So what we wanted to do is, for every digital transformation story, you have to have a journey, you have to have a compelling story, and our compelling story focus on the most essential element. It's that user, the occupant, the employee. And the guiding objectives and principles defined by the CEO as well as the CIO is basically where productivity, connectivity, and engagement. And our non-traditional approach, as mentioned, is without focusing, it was more of a prop tech solution and mobile-based application solution that tied all the different building systems together. And we were involved in this project as a case study from end to end, from the visioning, the launch, the visioning, the definition, assembling the stakeholders as Eric and Ben mentioned earlier, all the various members, whether it's IT, security, FM, operations, legal, even communications and marketing. Everybody is an essential member of this, of the smart building delivery. And we wanted to define, instead of just adding technology for the sake of it, the successful, really smart building implementation really has to focus on the use cases and the objectives. You got to define what your North Star is, what are your goals, have a journey and have a destination in place, and that way you can help deploy and implement a successful transformation. So through multiple visioning exercises and various use cases, we focused in and narrowed in on the 8 items listed on the screen here. That basically are access control, visitor management, space reservation, facility request, transit, parking management, community engagement, as well as employee benefits. And what we wanted to do is to connect all these different experiences with the building system, with the actual user and mobile application for the occupant, as well as the employee, as well as the visitor, to be able to use it seamlessly from the minute they actually step into the new HQ to go into their conference rooms and connect with the various systems from scheduling, reservation, and as Eric mentioned, with lighting solutions, and as well as Owen, and determining availability and basically real-time data information about the entire space. So the goal was to deliver that environment that provided no barriers for creativity, as well as basically community and employee engagement.
Yeah, and this next slide highlights a project that my WSP was involved in, as well as myself. It's called 14th at Irving. It is in downtown New York City. And one of the goals was for it to be a smart, healthy, sustainable, high-rise office for the tech industry. So it's a new building. It's being constructed right now. But in the bottom there, you can see in the image there, the bottom few floors it's called Civic Hall, which was somewhat of an existing space, but it's imagined as a kind of tech incubator space. So it's about bringing the tech community and just the community in general together to work together and really drive that community involvement. So that goal kind of bled down into the design of the building itself, including our smart building system implementation. So our team was involved in design of many of the systems throughout this building, but also specifically a kind of overarching smart platform design, and that include integrated systems to both help the owner and the occupant. So we're helping the owner, it's about facility management and then managing their building to a lot of energy needs and managing equipment, and then obviously helping the occupants, including tenants, how can they better move through the space, better use the space, meet up with different people or facilities they need to use. So this project did include a converged building IT network, as I mentioned earlier. This is becoming more popular in the past few years. So that all these systems could be on that single base building backbone and use it. If you're gonna go to the trouble to install it, you might as well use it to its full potential. and it also include an occupant-facing mobile app. As Mo just mentioned, you know, this is kind of a somewhat of a typical delivery vehicle for many smart building solutions. I do want to point out though that although it, you know, often ends up in an app, I mean that's easy for us to say, but as Mo mentioned, the app is often very, very different project to project, owner to owner, just because everybody has a little bit different goals, so it takes on a little bit different flavor and has different features as part of that design. It also include a floor-by-floor HVAC system, so it really, each floor was able to kind of dial in their space. It's a core and shell building with tenants in each floor, you know, for lease. So floor-to-floor systems are great for that, allowing the tenant flexibility. And also indoor air quality sensors. Well, actually, have some outdoor sensors as well, so they could measure the quality of the air going into each floor, each space, and then on the delivery side of that, downstream of the filters, so they can actually see how effective those are. And part of that design was designed to the reset IAQ standard. So that's an indoor air quality standard that really lets you focus on the indoor air quality and how you're monitoring it, how you're measuring it, and how you're showing your building occupants, you know, what it is, right? So that they're aware and they know. Next slide. So some of the successes with this project, we had direct developer engagement, as we've all mentioned here. You know, it's important to be involved with your client. In our case, it was a developer here, so that you really understand their goals and their needs from the get-go. And it includes various stakeholders from their team. You know, includes their high-level leadership and decision makers, but of course the facilities folks, the IT folks, the HR folks. All those people become important whenever you're delivering a solution like this. Another success, I would argue, is a close design coordination of all trades for smart components. So each sensor we were looking at implementing here, you know, it impacted other trades. So it's always critical, as most of us know in design, make sure those things are coordinated. Otherwise, they, at a minimum, can become, you know, topics of discussion during construction, or it can turn into a debate or just a missed item. And when your sensor doesn't get connected, then it's, you know, then the whole goal, your higher level goal won't work and won't make it to the app, just because you missed a small piece of the sensor. So everything's important in a smart building, right? Some of the challenges were, as I mentioned, designing for an owner or landlord and future tenant. So we're involved in the base building design of this. I'm not sure, there might be a few tenants starting to, you know, going into design phase now. I'm not totally sure. But there's always that kind of, those two different parties, right? One is an owner and an operator, and then one is a tenant, a leaser in the space. And so that can present some challenges for the types of systems. So in this particular building, part of the reason why we ended up in floor-by-floor HVAC systems with indoor air quality sensors on many different levels, more granular than we're, you know, used to traditionally seeing, perhaps. Of course, keeping up with the specified technology, as we've all mentioned, the smart building space is very new, always evolving. But by the time you first mention a certain technology or solution to your owner, by the time you get to final specifying it in final construction documents and then into construction, that may have changed. The model number may have changed, or it's outdated. Now they have a better one for the same price, or whatever the situation may be. That's keeping up with that is, you know, kind of becomes part of your responsibility as a smart building designer. And that gets back to enforcing the vision, right? You got to always get back to those goals that you defined early on in the visioning sessions, because as I mentioned, if you miss a sensor and construction doesn't get installed, well, it's not just that one sensor that you've missed. Now it'll trickle down. Now now the owner can't see that particular key performance indicator or KPI in their building dashboard that you just spent a lot of design time designing for them. So all of that has trickle down effects. And there's a link there to further reading about this particular project at our public webpage.
Yeah, so I really like what Ben was saying about enforcing the vision. I think that maybe the story behind this case study is really maybe revisiting the vision. So this is a healthcare facility that had been in operation for about 10 years, and the owner approached us and said, "Look, this facility was designed to be high performing, and we're not seeing it as being high performing." And so can you help us come back and take a look at this facility and see what's going on? And so again, we went in, took a look. The things that I note on the slide are the things that we ended up finding. I think, again, there were control systems that were not commissioned and not functioning and not programmed properly, that were never really used or put in place. So lighting systems just ran 24 hours a day. There were, again, the coordination and the effort to define when people are using what spaces, particularly, again, the medical office building portion of this project was built out roughly 2 years after the team finished the acute care facility. So again, this idea of enforcing the vision, focusing on the vision and staying with the intent of keeping this building smart. A lot of the spaces, again, just function in the same way all the time. So we ended up going in with smart sensors that had integrated occupancy into all the spaces that had some kind of a variable occupancy pattern. So conference rooms and other spaces like that, so that those rooms could be aware of the, whether or not people were in the space, and then they would reset to their temperature based on whether or not people were in those spaces. There was a lot of work that we did in their central systems. So again, we were focused in the first effort on their cooling plant. Again, they're probably beyond the scope of this discussion, but we really holistically re-looked at the overall intelligence behind the plant, and we rewrote and reworked the entire way that the plant was working, and it took some enabling technology, some drives that were put in on the primary pumps for the chillers, but a lot of it was just programming and sensors and leveraging what was there. So again, connecting this space between, right, connecting design to the building automation, and then overlaying a strategy on top of that, and then staying with the vision. And again, we were able to make a huge impact, a 30% reduction in energy use for that Chillwater Central plant by implementing what we did. There's a lot of unfinished areas, again, that had airflows to them. So just again, staying on top of these buildings once they're in place. I mean, these spaces had been unfinished, for 10 years, and just air pouring into these spaces. So again, and then really the one of the biggest impacts that we made was really relooking at the controls in each room at a zone level and flowing that temperature and airflow data up to the air handlers and central systems, and then making smart decisions on it. So again, this idea of enforcing the vision, staying with the vision, revisiting the vision, and knowing when a smart building is trending off the track. Our focus now with this client is really around sustainment of performance, so analytics and really flowing the BMS information into an analytic platform that can let us maintain the dynamic performance of the building.
So we've talked a lot about different types of smart building solutions. We've talked a lot about energy savings, and we've talked a lot about sort of employees and the user and affecting their experience. One of the methods in which we use to evaluate smart building solutions when we are in that visioning stage and sort of in the very beginning stages of a project is to look at what the ROI or what the value of that type of solution may bring to the owner, so that then we may choose, this may make more sense for an investment versus this. And where we see the largest impact, sort of in a general sense for the owner, is by linking your traditional building systems with the business itself. And that's where we see the greatest impact for employees, which are oftentimes the largest resource for an organization. So, you know, that's where we talk about engaging multiple different types of stakeholders now, because we're really looking at how we're integrating between the business itself and the building to support that business. Some of the apps and things like that Ben and Mo were talking about are designed to specifically empower the user in the space and make their lives more efficient. So we really try and use that lens when looking at, you know, where to put our money in the smart building world. So you can go to the next slide, Amara. So for a recent case study that we've done here at Canon Design, we were looking at a corporate office and trying to empower the users and create a more efficient workflow for them. So we have, you know, we're looking at introducing a networked lighting control system that's ultimately pushing data, and this is where we talk about data flow. We're talking about pushing that data from the traditional lighting control platform to the building automation system, and then from these traditional building systems over to a business system platform such as Microsoft Outlook. And when we see that type of effect, that's where we can really make that impact on the user in terms of how they actually interact with the space. And we're really looking for ways to interface with the user in the least sort of changing way possible. I guess that's not a great way to put it, but we don't want to disrupt their workflow a whole lot. So while new apps may be a great solution, you know, if we can embed this technology and these solutions into the native, you know, software and hardware that people are used to interacting with, it should make their lives a little bit easier. So in this sense, we are pushing lighting control data in a live view to our Microsoft Outlook room scheduling tool. And we're monetizing or quantifying the productivity impact by the time we're saving these folks to actually schedule rooms. So looking at these methods of triple bottom line and looking at how we monetize these types of productivity solutions are very difficult, and oftentimes are sometimes a bit of an estimate. But it is a general point that the productivity is, you know, the more that you can monetize that or calculate what that ROI looks like, you know, the more investment that you'll have in those areas. So.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. You all packed a ton of information into a very short amount of time. I do have a couple of questions about the details you provided, and I'm hoping you can provide some insights. So one question for you: at what point in a project do you suggest the smart building expert like yourself get started? Any feedback? I think Mo, I think you might have some thoughts on that.
Sure. I think the earlier the better. This is, you know what, you are at the beginning of the project, you're setting the tone, and the tone at top and that North Star that we talked about, having your, you know, your use cases defined and basically plan your journey and your destination. So the earlier that you can get together with the various stakeholders, even while they're still evaluating the actual properties, the leases, etc., because you are defining what the requirements of the business requirements, the communication requirements, and other standards within the actual corporation itself.
Sure, sure. Any other feedback there, gentlemen? Any other thoughts?
So I would just echo what Mo said. I think the earlier the better. And also, again, I think the most complicated part of delivering a smart solution is the stakeholder engagement and alignment. And so the earlier and more focused the team is on getting that alignment and that communication, you know, the better. It's parts of the organization that may not have typically in the past been engaged in a construction and a building visioning process. So managing that becomes very, very important.
Yeah, and
Got it.
I would just echo that. Also, the educational aspect. I've found myself actually putting on the education hat even before we can go vision. Because we've got all these non-traditional stakeholders together, and I think there is a space that is necessary for just a communal education so that everyone's sort of speaking the same language and can start to envision what that North Star might start to look like. So education.
Oh, and if I would love to really add, that's a great point. And part of that education is once you get everybody involved from the get-go, you have buy-in, you have the champion internally. So if you have buy-in from the stakeholders and the champions, you're actually going to succeed in that journey and the delivery.
Agree.
So speaking of buy-in and all of the players, how do you as designers address the facility manager, the CFO, the CIO? How do you address all those different players who are making decisions about this smart building?
So
Right.
I'll speak. Yeah, I'll make a comment just quickly. Again, you have to speak clearly and you have to demonstrate value. We talked about how ROI drives engagement. I think also the use case and bringing the use case to a concrete value proposition for the organization, that becomes really key to getting engagement from the leadership levels that you were talking about.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Eric. I feel like the development of the use case is really our number one tool to help people envision what this experience may look like, and then break that down into, okay, which system is providing which information to the next system, and starting to look at that data flow, overlaid on top of that use case. But really that experiential use case tool is what I find to be our best friend in that.
Yeah, Owen and Eric, I think what's also helpful as part of that exercise, we got to take off our engineering hat and put on our consultative hat, because not just knowing what's the benefit for the entire organization, you got to understand your audience. So what FM is looking for is different than legal, than basically the different stakeholders. So you got to highlight to them at the end of the day what that value add from that specific use case to their department and that stakeholder. Otherwise, honestly, they're not going to be invested in it.
Agreed.
So going back to the very beginning of a project, a building owner comes to you and they say, I want a smart building. What's the number one request that you receive from them? And how do you help them envision or put together the request correctly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll just jump in here. That is exactly what I've heard from some clients. I want a smart building. How and when can I get one? Loaded question. We found that it's great if they come to us with that. The next follow-up thing sometimes they say is, oh, and I heard about this one particular smart solution that someone once thinks is great and what I should buy. Should I spend millions of dollars on it? And that's when that's almost harder to back out from, because you really want to start with them. They're forward thinking to come into you with this. They know they want a smart building. How can you help them develop that into a vision and then a specification in a project? So it really starts there. If they have, I want IoT, I want my whole building lit up, connected, they have specific solutions in mind, then you almost have to backtrack them a little bit, because you want to make, at the end of the day, if they just buy technology for technology's sake, either when the project's done or shortly thereafter, they're going to be coming back to you and complaining about how much they spent doing that, and what are they getting out of it. So again, it just comes back to getting them coming to you and then sitting down with them and agreeing, hey, we need to involve these other people who you may not have thought about right now, and that's how we need to move forward and start to think about a vision.
Yeah, I think I would just also just build on what Ben said, in that what I see is that the full delivery of a smart infrastructure, a smart building, is really driving a need for roles that have not been traditionally a part of the building delivery process. So this integrator role is what I see, and what I experience in going into existing buildings is you see the impact of the lack of that integrator. I can't tell you how many buildings I've been into, hundreds and hundreds of buildings, where the lighting system doesn't work, doesn't do anything, and the HVAC system has been sustained, and this, so there's been lack, and that lack of that role has driven to a lack of that integration. So what I see is the industry waking up to the need to that role, and again, I think that's why we're all here talking. Again, it's really exciting to see a focus on that.
That's a great comment, Eric. And one thing I noticed as well, adding that whole dimension of prop tech solutions that are delivered by people who have not worked really in the built environment from an MEP and construction delivery standpoint. They are software and tech people. So the entire process, the entire delivery, and the stakeholder, that's all foreign to them. And those solutions don't even go in the typical traditional bid build scenario. It's purely an IT delivery method. And that's similar to the case study I picked. We went with a solution provider who custom built an app. To them, built world delivery is something very foreign, and it takes people, an expert like us in the panel, the MSI, if there's one on board, to help guide them as well and educate them as part of that process.
Yes, totally agree.
Exactly. I think education, it just comes back to us educating as consultants and experts in this space, educating how projects can be delivered, educating the type of solutions that are out there, the type of tools that owners may have available to them. We've approached a project where part of our proposal was actually more of an educational curriculum for the owner, to say, before we even get to what you want to slice off ABC, let's talk about what's out there first.
Well, fantastic, and thank you very much. That's about all we have time for today. I'd like to thank our subject matter experts, Owen Dalton, Mo Fahim, Eric Nienhuis, and Ben Wirtz, for this terrific discussion. Again, additional resources and the quiz to earn continuing education credit are available in the session resources under the agenda. Finally, on behalf of CFE Media and Technology, thank you for attending. This concludes this portion of the training session. Thank you and goodbye.